Yo, what is going on, everybody? Yeah, baby. Let us know in the comments. What's your favorite title sequence? I don't
Yeah.
know.
What's your favorite
You
theme song
know,
you just can't skip?
like I enjoy Friends. I enjoy Phineas and Ferb. Psych.
Futurama. Futurama's a good one.
The Simpsons. You can't skip The Simpsons.
Because you gotta see what Bart writes on the board. And like
Well, yeah, and
what's gonna happen
it's
to the
different every
couch.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I see all
you
of
know,
those.
you gotta. You can skip The Office,
You
100%.
skip The Office. I skip Sons of Anarchy every single time. It was like riding through this world.
Right. That's funny. So I guess let's hop into it. Talking about tile sequence is always great, but
Well,
which I
let
don't skip this one. I even know The Last of Us, but I don't skip that one either. So
yeah.
it gets you in the mood, and who wouldn't want to listen to the theme song
The theme's
once
good.
more?
You know what? I really like the theme from part two as well.
Yeah, me too.
The like
The banjo typey.
yeah. I don't know. It's different. I also feel like I heard it a whole lot more because it was like at the main menu, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I
And
think
that
so.
game is like twice as long as the first game.
Every time you log in there,
Oh man. Well,
every time actually you find Abby's coin, the theme song
the theme
plays.
song plays.
It's like, oh, there's one of her dad's coins. So anyway, welcome back, everybody, to the podcast. This is episode 3 of this series about The Last of Us HBO series, and the title of this episode of the in the show is called "Long, Long Time," and we waited a long, long time to see what was going on with this Bill story, and oh boy, did we get one today.
Let's go ahead and
So,
start with something else though. Did you see the thing at the beginning of the episode?
you gotta be more specific.
The memorial.
Yes, I actually didn't see that when I watched it, but then as I was waiting for you to hop on, I was just kind of looking through it and I saw that.
So I didn't see it when I watched it either, but I was informed about this like earlier that day or something. So maybe it wasn't. You know what? I think this got added on because
That would make sense because I don't
yeah,
remember seeing it.
I believe she passed away on Monday. So when this aired on Sunday, I don't think it would have been there. I think.
Mm,
But so there's a memorial for Annie Wershing. Do you know who that was?
can't think of anything right now, but
That is Tess from the game.
no,
Yep.
really.
She passed away. Let me get my facts right here. Actually, she died on Sunday. So
Dang.
the news
That
may
that
not
make
have broken yet to add this to it, so it may not have been there at launch, but she passed away on January 29th. She unfortunately died from cancer. Very, very sad news. Tess was not in the game for very long, but
nope.
she's still a standout character, and her performance was fantastic. So, very sad to hear about this.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, that's yeah, they must have added that on then. Well,
Yeah,
we love you, Annie Wershing, and all of the work that you did for this game
absolutely.
and for the media. I haven't seen a lot of stuff that she's been in, but I'm sure she does a great job. So I guess now we'll talk more about the episode. So now we get to finally see Bill,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, Once again, like Tess, we don't see a ton of Bill in the game, but he's still pretty important. But before we get to that, we get to see Ellie and Joel kind of making their ways, traveling there. So do you have any thoughts about that whole sequence? And she finds that stalker. Actually, that was the first stalker we got to see. That
Was
was
that the one
trapped
that
in that
was
hole.
crushed? That's a stalker.
Yeah, because you could tell that like he was kind of getting the clicker face, but he could still see. So that's a
Oh,
stalker.
okay.
So luckily for her, she was trapped because she would never seen him coming.
Well, let's go ahead and, you know, as far as the whole Ellie and Joel stuff goes,
Hmm.
we finally got a possible explanation for the outbreak.
Yes, we
How'd
did.
you feel about that?
It was fine. Um, it kind of makes sense. More than monkeys, I guess, as she says. Um, so that was pretty cool that they put that in there. Which surprisingly, I forgot to put that in my notes, but I remember being like, "Oh snap! Wait, never mind. I did. Got it. Well,
So the
um,
explanation was that something mutated with the fungus essentially that was
yeah,
used in a lot of food products, particularly like grains and flours,
yeah,
is what it sounded like. And if you ate enough of it, you would become infected. Interestingly enough, the old lady across the street is being fed biscuits
yeah, biscuits.
because the
Dang,
old man offers some to Sarah and says, "You want some biscuits?" And she says, "No thanks."
good on
But,
you, Sarah.
well, is it because she made pancakes for Joel that morning?
Well,
And Joel specifically says pancake mix.
well, evidently that was an old batch.
Now they
We know Joel
do
was poor, so
they do add on there if you ate enough of it, you'll get infected, which I think is
yeah,
kind of their way of saying like, eh, maybe they do, maybe you don't. I don't know. This is kind of how it starts.
yeah. And we just want to give the man some pancakes.
So,
Yeah,
what would have been now Joel mentions the Atkins diet. Let me refresh my memory on. Okay, that's what I thought. Atkins diet is kind of like early keto from like back in
okay,
the day. It's a pretty low carb. And if you're eating low carb, chances are you're cutting out a lot of these breads. You're not going to be eating biscuits. You're not going to be eating pancakes. If you're eating
hmm,
low carb, you're probably focusing a lot more on protein. Now that
yeah,
would have been an interesting way to kind of get around the whole infection. You know what I mean? Thing is because he mentions Atkins, and it's 2003. That would have been at that time that Atkins was being talked about a lot.
yeah.
That I remember kind of hearing about it. So it would have been interesting if like Joel and Tommy were doing like the Atkins diet, you know, and that's kind
That
of
would
how
be.
they got around it. But no, they're actually just eating pancakes in the morning. Coincidentally, Joel says, "Yeah, if you eat enough of them." I have to go back to episode
Yeah,
one and see how many pancakes were on his plate.
yeah. Should be. I'll go back.
Yeah,
Let's.
count those pancakes for me.
Oh wait, no, he doesn't eat pancakes.
Hmm?
I think he says I wanted pancakes, but she was make. He just has eggs.
Oh, did she make him eggs?
Yeah, because I remember him eating eggs. I think here. Let me rewatch.
Where's the pancake mix?
Oh, was that? Yeah, I was. Sorry.
I was gonna make you birthday pancakes. I swear.
I don't really like pancakes.
I know you don't like them. It's for my benefit.
Well, I'm going to have to cut this whole thing out now.
Yeah, something that I liked when they were on their nice little walk to Bill's. You kind of got because you get to walk a little bit to Bill's in the game, right? You go through the woods, and they put the quote where Ellie's like, "Oh man, I've never been through the woods and stuff."
Yeah.
Um, and some part that I thought was interesting that because we'll talk about the whole Bill thing later, but and there's a part when you're leaving the church to go head to the uh, high school,
Mhm.
and you have to get all through those infected in the back, like in kind of like the cemetery part of this church. Bill has burned like all these infected bodies.
Yes.
They're
I
all on
agree.
fire, and Joel tells Ellie, you don't need to be looking at that. Now we
Mm.
don't get that in this episode, but when they show all the like the bones and the bodies from the people that were massacred by the government, he still kind of says like, "Hey, no, you don't need to be looking at that."
Mhm.
So I liked that that they put that in there because Joel just goes dad mode sometimes.
Now
Um,
let's talk about the little hidey hole store real quick. You brought it up a second
yeah.
ago. So
Um,
Joel's looking for his little hidey hole and he can't seem to find it for
mhm,
longer than you would expect. It takes him to
yeah.
find that thing.
He was playing with no hood.
He's playing on grounded.
He was playing grounded, dude.
In which case you would have died to the trapdoor.
Yeah, dude. I would like stub my toe and like fell and then like split my head on like some broken glass or something.
So I want to talk about this scene.
Okay.
You say it's a stalker. That's the phase we're
Uh-huh.
at. So is this right before clicker?
Yes.
So it goes runner, stalker, clicker,
Bloater.
uh, bootstrap bill.
Yeah.
Okay. What are they called?
Bloater.
Well, because when you end up stuck to the wall, you're not necessarily a bloater, right? Like it's bloater's like a maybe, right?
Wait. Well, in the phase, yeah. So it's like the actual phase is runner and then stalker and then clicker and then stage 4 you're a bloater.
Oh, really? Like a stage 4 is a bloater,
Yeah,
but
they don't put take me down. If you're stuck to the wall, you're stage 3.5.
but like if you get stuck to the wall, you don't turn into a bloater, right? Necessarily, or
Uh
is that kind of a gray area on the information?
I mean, that's kind of a gray area. They never really say, but I mean, you definitely could because it's all just about time. So it's not
Hmm.
really like it's not like the bloater's walking around, he's just getting those gains like Abby. He's eating more burritos, you know. You only become a bloater if you become a breakfast burrito.
I'm staying with my
Or if
original
you
theory. You only become a bloater if you were a lineman. So we had kind of talked about this a little bit, I think, in our first episode, where it seemed like Tess wasn't as tough as she was supposed to be,
yeah.
and Ellie was a little darker and tougher already than she should have been. Like a little more desensitized to violence than she should have been
Hmm.
yet, you know?
Yes.
And this scene here really makes it seem like Ellie's got like a demented side to her in the show. My only assumption for why she does what she does here is because of what happens to Riley.
Yeah.
That's the only reason I can think of why she would go there and kind of like cut it first and then stab it in the head, you know? Ellie's not this comfortable killing things yet. So this scene was interesting, you know?
Hmm.
Uh, Hopefully we elaborate on why she maybe did this later on, like what the purpose of it was. My assumption at this point, though, would be anger for what happened to Riley.
Yeah. And I didn't know if she was just like kind of curious, like what's inside their brain. That's what
What
I
you
kind
got
of
in
thought. I
here?
was like, oh wow, some weird black kiss of death stuff. Which thankfully we saw none of.
Imagine,
Spoiler, no
imagine.
kiss of death.
Okay, you're watching the show. You're about 12 minutes into the episode. Okay?
Yeah.
She slowly walks up to it and she pulls out her knife and cuts his forehead. And then she leans in for a zombie kiss of death. What would you do?
Kills him.
Would you finish the episode, or would you just call it quits right there, having seen two zombie kisses of death at this point?
You know, I think I'd have to, finish so we can make this amazing podcast everybody wants to listen to. But that would definitely be going in the notes. We'd probably still be talking about that. And that's probably the only thing we would talk about, even though this is an episode worth talking about. I would just be like, okay, we got problems here. So when you're walking through Billstown, which again we don't really get, you find what's supposed to be Mortal Kombat game, which they actually put Mortal Kombat in there.
Yes, they did.
Which was pretty cool. Maybe hopefully we get to see that. If they better make like a Left Behind kind of thing. I think
Oh,
we
it looks like
mentioned that
Riley's in the
they
trailer,
would.
so I think they
Yeah,
will.
we think they would. Yeah, and she put Alina, who bites people's face off. So she referenced like an actual character. I'm pretty sure. I haven't played Mortal Kombat in years, so I could
Let me
not
double
remember. I
check real
think
quick.
I know who she's talking about.
Yeah, maybe it's Alina. Oh, Melina?
Oh, maybe it's Melina. I just wrote down Alina because that's what I heard.
Melina. Oh yeah, 'cause she's got the monster face. Like she's got like a
Does she
mask
have the
that
four
she
arms?
no, she doesn't have the four arms, but she does have like a grotesquely large, like almost like Venom-like smile. Yeah, I have never been like I've never been someone who keeps up too much with Mortal
Yeah,
Kombat.
I know some of the Mortal Kombat characters, but not
I
a ton.
watched the movie, the more recent movie, and I thought it was fun. As
Oh
far as
yeah.
like movie video game adaptations, like that's one of the better ones because it was just a fun time. I knew what it was. You just want to see people fight.
Nice. That's true. So yeah, she puts in Melina, which I guess is supposed to be who Angel Knives is supposed to be based off of. Angel Knives is the one in the game who they talk about.
That's right.
So I thought that was cool that they put in there. I was kind of confused when they're like, "Yeah, there's a girl named Melina." I was like, "What? It's Angel Knives. Why are you changing it?" But they've changed quite a bit. So I mean,
Yeah, yeah. Tell me about it.
but yeah, I think that's basically. Oh, um, something I thought was funny. Joel did not learn about from dropping the wrench after he killed the old lady.
What did
You
he
know
do?
why?
What happened?
Because he put that AR in the hidey hole.
He did, didn't he?
Yeah. Which I think he said like there's no ammo, but I mean I find quite a bit of ammo when I'm, scavenging, so come on.
Yeah,
But I was like, bruh, upgrade, go into your tool bench, get the upgraded holster where you can hold two big boy guns. Come on, Joel.
Now that would be cool if we watched him go to a tool bench at one point and do some modifications for a minute.
That would be cool, but too bad he leaves everything behind, so.
Yeah.
To the rest of the episode, where it starts September 30th, 2003, is where we're finally introduced to Bill, Nick Offerman playing the part. Who else would? I have no idea. Um, so I really liked how they introduced Bill and how we got to see kind of his backstory and why he has that whole town to himself.
Coolest hidey hole ever.
Yeah, that's the hidey hole that Joel should have jumped in, and or Ellie.
Yeah.
Come on,
That thing was
right?
awesome.
Yeah, that was crazy. And I loved like how they, you know, showed him taking it over and he's like, I can do whatever I want. And he figures out how to keep running water and electricity,
Mm-hmm.
breaking into the Home Depot. That was funny.
Yeah.
And just kind of owning it and living it up. I thought that was pretty great.
That was good. Yeah, it was fun. It was
Oh,
fun seeing him kind of take over on how he kind of got in a situation because when you cross paths with him in the game as Joel and Ellie, he's already got things set up.
yeah,
He's been here for a while,
yeah,
and he's pretty good to go. He's good to keep going.
yeah. And we learned in the show, like, that was his hometown. That was his mom's house. So, you know, he knew how to run that place, I guess.
Lol, this guy still lives with his mother.
Huh, who does that? Um, and something that was interesting, whether it was, Bill just being Bill, is that when he like goes outside to make sure everything's clear and like everybody's gone.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, he's totally strapped, looking like my Honduran military homies, and he's got a mask on,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, what the heck? Like, I didn't think we were gonna see those because there's no spores anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But he had a mask, so I was like, oh well, attaboy Bill.
Well, I
He
felt
knows.
like his reasoning for that was probably because we don't know what's going on yet.
Yeah,
You know, uh, as we've learned in the game, in the game, the masks are very necessary at times, but in the show, the masks are never needed to be used because that's not a thing. But having just had the military take them away and saying a bunch of people are infected, I imagine that's why I threw the mask on for the time being.
yeah, yeah. And it gives us that epic um medium shot that we needed in the trailer when he goes into a close up and he takes off his mask and we see it's Bill. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the reason, don't you know? He knew he'd be in the trailer. But yeah, he lives like a king though.
Yeah, he does. He's apparently like a
Like,
really good cook.
yeah, like a beast cook. You know, he's making all this stuff, and I like how they put in his traps and all that stuff. That was good. Um, and then I loved the blue truck when I saw him get in that, and I was like, "Yo, that's the truck."
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the game it's not his, but you know, we got to see that. So 4 years later, after Bill takes the town, we get introduced to Frank. You know, this is something which, when I was watching this and after I finished the episode, I was thinking this is exactly what our man Tyler wanted. He wanted something that was like different and that could kind of tell us something more that we don't already know, right?
Yes. That
So
is exactly what I thought about when I was watching this episode was this is what I've been asking for. Elaborating on what you've already given me, you know? Like,
yeah,
which, why don't you go ahead and give us the rundown of what we know about Bill and Frank from the games?
gotcha. Well, first of all, I mean, I think this means that, you know, you think that they filmed this entire series and, you know, it's been in post production and all this time and whatever. No, Neil Druckmann listened to our podcast, I'm pretty sure, and heard your demands and put that in there. So keep them up and maybe whatever you want will get put in the game. We love you, Neil. Thank you for listening.
So yes, that must have been it. Within the last 2 weeks, they went and filmed this episode and squeezed it in real quick for me.
Exactly.
Now,
Um,
yeah. So yeah, in design, most definitely, this was what I wanted. So go ahead and talk about Bill and Frank here.
Perfect. So in the game, we're introduced to Bill, right? He's kind of like this crazy man who is very self-protective, and you know he's a very individualist. He's a realist for sure. Um, so you know he lives by himself because anybody else, that's another mouth to feed, and you know it's better for your own protection and kind of your own like I guess you could say spirit or whatever because you don't have to deal with the worries and all the hassle and responsibilities that comes in from protecting and looking out for someone. Um, and so that's all we really know about Bill sometimes. And then as we're going through our journey with him through his town, uh, you know, he's talking to Ellie about like, you know, you just need to drop her. There's no point. Like, take her back wherever because, you know, you should be alone because that's how you're going to survive.
Seriously, you gotta take that kid back to where you found her.
I can't just take her back.
Then send her packing, let her find her own way.
And he says, you know, because I had a partner, someone I looked after, and you know, we realized that he says that he realized that it would be better if they split up and they were on their own because you know he was a realist and said like you know this is the way it is.
Look, let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, I had somebody that I cared about. A partner. Somebody I had to look after. And in this world, that sort of shit's good for one thing. Getting you killed. So you know what I did? I wisened the fuck up. And I realized it's gotta be just me.
And so then we don't know who this person is. But then once we go into the house where we will eventually find the car battery, we find a body that's strung up, and Bill stops. He's freaking out, and then he's yelling at Joel, right? And then he's like, stops, and you could tell it really hit him. And so then Joel's like, "What? You know this guy or something?" You know, still kind of mad. And he's like, "Yeah, that's Frank." And he's like, "Who the heck is Frank?" And he's like, "He was my partner."
He's the only idiot that would wear a shirt like that. He's got bites. Here. And
I reckon he didn't want to turn, so he...
yeah, Guess not. Well, fuck him.
So then that's when we realize, this Frank guy, we don't know too much about him really at all in the game. Just that he was Bill's partner and that he, was the only person that would wear a shirt like that. So he has a ton of bites. So we kind of put two and two together that he got bitten and scratched. So he didn't want to turn, so he hung himself.
And
then he
isn't
leaves a
there?
note.
That's right. There's a note.
Uh-huh. He leaves a note that's basically like, Bill, I never really liked you, but obviously like he did kind of deal and whatever, and I hate you, but not really. And that's just kind of how we saw the relationship.
Look, Bill, about your buddy back there, that's a tough deal. And
We square.
we're square.
And get the fuck out of my town.
I guess so. That's basically so. Watching this episode,
That's game.
That's game. And so watching this episode, it was like, okay, I know where this is supposed to end. In my head, I'm saying I know where this is going to end.
Yeah.
Frank is going to hang himself. They're gonna get in a fight, and he's gonna hang himself.
Yeah.
Now, that's not what happens.
Not at all.
At all. The show certainly did throw a curveball. And so let's talk about it, and then we can talk about whether it worked for us or not.
Yeah. So in the show, we meet Frank as he falls into a hole. He's in the Baltimore QZ and he's trying to head to Boston. We still kind of, which I don't know if this is just Nick Offerman's, performance or how they wrote Bill, but in game he's very like confident and all this stuff, but and which he kind of was right when we showed like the montage of him living by himself. But as soon as he gets that first human interaction, he's just kind of like, I mean, at first, he's telling him like, I'll shoot you. I'm looking for bites. Boston's that way, but he's still kind of not as confident. Like in the game, Bill would have just like shot the guy or, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Bills in game, I mean, the story is completely different for sure, but Bill in game versus in the show is like a complete 180 for sure.
Yeah. When I was first seeing Bill like this, when he's first meeting Frank and stuff like that, I was like, this is how Bill used to be. And then Bill's going to have it, like, he's going to change with time, kind of like how Joel has, because of something that happens to him, Maybe he gets really hurt by Frank, and now he's learned to, like, not trust people anymore, or be a lot more cynical and stuff like that, Because Bill's another character in the games that really stands out with just, like, the performance and their dialogue, their attitude, And I was looking forward to Nick Offerman doing all of that stuff, and he doesn't really do that. Doesn't really do any of that stuff.
Not really. He seems like a very Nick Offerman character.
Well, see, I feel like not so much, because even Ron Swanson would have shot Frank in the face if he's in an apocalypse.
Oh yeah, but I mean, as far as like the, sensitive kind of like, okay, I'm actually kind of
sure. Did you find it a little strange that he was so quick to invite Frank into his home?
Yes, but I mean, I guess he checked, that if he was more, well, no, because
he gave him the optical pat down and he cleared him.
Yeah, I did an ocular pat down and I cleared him.
Say what?
Sorry?
I'm saying that I did an ocular assessment of the situation, garnered that he was not a security risk, and I cleared him for passage.
He didn't take us to the Grand Canyon. He detached the trailer and stole my car.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, the weird thing is that Mac had already cleared him as a security risk. Did an ocular pat down on him. Amazing, right?
Oh, you cleared him, Mac?
which actually, remembering in the game, Bill says a line that's like, it's not the infected that scare me because they're predictable, but it's the people that scare me because you never know what they're gonna do.
And that
So
was
yeah,
that was game or that was show that said
this
that?
is game.
That's game.
So once again, it's a completely like 180. So yeah, as someone who played the game, seeing Bill invite Frank into his home very quick is weird.
It was strange, right?
Yeah.
Now, looking at it from one angle, like, oh, maybe this is how it used to be, you know?
Yeah.
People can change over 20 years, but that's not really what happens.
No.
That's not really what
No,
happens there.
not really what happens at all. So
It just
but,
seems like the Bill character that we know would not have even let anybody get close to his mom's piano.
Hey! What'd I say to you when we walked down the steps? What'd I say?
I'm just fixing your stupid pile.
Don't touch.
yeah, no way.
And once again,
Right. Because
if
Ellie can't even touch anything. Not even
right,
comic books or whatever.
right, like she's
What
yeah,
she does, but
yeah, she like takes a few or something. So then we just kind of start seeing Bill and Frank throughout the years. They eventually meet Joel and Tess.
yeah.
That's kind of how they grow their connections. Which, like you had said in the games, or in the game, uh, Joel does not know who Frank is.
Yeah.
He only knows Bill.
He
But
only knows
him
Bill.
and Tess both know Bill, but they don't know Frank. So
Yeah, which is which is interesting because if you think about obviously they made their connection, smuggling and whatever, and I guess maybe trade, like they kind of talk about in the game or the show. But in game Bill, you wouldn't really think of anybody who would do anything like that, right? In the show, it was Frank that put it all together, but they don't even know who Frank is in the game. So I wonder how that whole thing came to pass in the game.
yeah, I mean it's one of those things that didn't really need to be answered in the game, so you
Yeah.
didn't have to think about it. Uh, and you could have elaborated on it here. The problem is the two just don't sync up anymore.
Hmm.
So like the explanation in the show doesn't work for the game.
Yeah.
So we do have a baseline on currency though, on at least trade, is that either one gun costs a pack of strawberry seeds or a pack of strawberry seeds costs one gun. I'm not sure which way it is.
Well, by the look of it, those are some pretty dang good strawberries,
Yeah,
and they
I would
probably
say
haven't had any of those in
it's
years. So, I
probably one pack of strawberry seeds costs a gun.
mean, everything's guns and ration cards and everything, right? Like,
Any old gun though.
Robert sells guns and all this stuff, and
We'll take your compact, we'll take your 9mm, we'll take your rifle, we'll take your BB gun.
yeah,
Airsoft gun? Yeah, I mean I'm just trying to get rid of these seeds.
that's right. But no, not pancake mix.
No,
Don't eat that.
don't be giving me none of that pancake. I'm on the Atkins.
Something that I thought they did a good job, like with the strawberries. In a world
They
that's
did do a
just
good
so
job growing those strawberries, you're right.
well, yeah, those looked ripe, baby.
They were some good looking strawberries.
They were. I don't know how Bill didn't find them earlier, but um, they, in a world that's so broken and there's not a whole lot of meaning, and especially for a character like Bill, it was really cool for them to show like all these little small things that we kind of take for granted, now because we don't have to deal with any of that,
Mhm.
right? They made him so happy, right? Like they were so happy to eat some strawberries, and I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that was a good scene. There's a lot of scenes that they've done well with, I think, like them eating the strawberries, like Ellie telling Joel how lucky he is to ride an airplane. That was another good one, where he's saying it from our perspective. You're overpaying for a cramped seat and food's like expensive.
Yeah,
And she's like, but you got to fly in the sky. And it's like, yeah, we've become desensitized to a lot of like the most like amazing feats of humankind, of like science and engineering.
yeah,
And now it's just transportation. Like I like airplanes because they get me there faster. I hate
yeah,
the airport. I generally hate the ride.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a really good point. You know, so
But like, yeah,
We'll see if they kind of.
how many times am I looking out the window, just being like taking it in, you know? Almost never.
But now we're gonna talk about the Raiders, not the Oakland slash Las Vegas because they moved to Vegas. Um, we're talking
So the
about
Vegas Raiders try to attack
the
Bill and
Las
Frank.
Vegas Raiders are trying to take out Bill, and they got blamed.
They did.
Which I thought that it was interesting that like Joel had his whole like construction background. He's like, yeah, that fence is not gonna work, yada yada yada, and whatever,
It's true.
right? And then even Bill's like, we'll be fine because he's
But
got
they
flamethrowers.
weren't really super fine, were they?
No, they were not.
Because Frank had to
Why
go
he
out
didn't
and
take
distract
cover,
him.
I don't know why Bill didn't take cover,
Bill
but
was standing in the middle of that street.
and
Like,
yet they still couldn't hit him, and they still kept running to the fence and burning. I don't know why.
yep. Don't know. Poor AI.
Yeah.
Yep. So Frank distracts Bill. Bill takes a bullet to the gut. And I guess Frank's got some medical training.
I guess.
EMT maybe? Surgeon? I don't know because the next scene is not what you're expecting at all after that.
No.
Because, once again, it's like, is Bill dying? Well, no, Bill can't die because he's, in the game. No,
Yeah.
Bill doesn't die there. But, the next scene. You want to take us away on that one?
Yeah, next scene, 10 years later, we see Frank and he's just in a wheelchair, which he's painting, a very good artist, I may add. But they're aging, which I mean, you see some gray and stuff in Bill's hair and everything in the game, and you still see a little bit in Joel too. But like this, they made them like they were old.
Yeah. Like, it really seems like Bill at the outbreak was a bit closer to how Bill looks in the game than final
Yeah.
Bill in this.
So maybe he's like 40, and then he turns to be like 60.
But he was dressed more like Bill from the game by the end. I felt like, with like his coat and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Maybe
I mean,
maybe I'm
I'm just
remembering it wrong.
no, because they kind of turns into like basically old people, and I don't know. His outfits, they were okay. They weren't really, they were mid.
They're mid-tier outfits.
um, but yeah, so Frank is sick. We don't know the disease or illness, but he says like, this it wasn't curable before the pandemic anyway.
Let me see.
So whatever.
Because
I don't
I was thinking it might be
believe it
multiple
was mentioned.
sclerosis. Let me see what it is. Frank actually has ALS or multiple sclerosis.
Oh dang! There you go.
Yeah.
Was that mentioned in the show?
No, I don't believe it was ever mentioned in the show.
Oh, you
But
just looked it up.
yeah, I looked it up real quick to confirm it, but there were certainly signs of it, like the inability to like hold the paintbrush well, or the utensils and stuff like that. So let me give
Yeah.
you a good explanation here, so I don't mess anything up. Multiple sclerosis, it can basically result in like just like you just can't control like motor functions as well as you
Mm-hmm.
used to be able to. The symptoms include vision loss, pain, fatigue, impaired coordination. In MS, the immune system attacks a protective sheath, which is a myelin sheath, that covers nerve fibers and causes communication problems between your brain and the rest of your body. Eventually, the disease can cause permanent damage or deterioration of the nerve fibers because they're exposed. And like Frank says, there's no cure for multiple sclerosis. And this was all via the Mayo Clinic. That's essentially it right there for you.
Gotcha. Thank you.
So that's what Frank's got.
So yeah, Frank is a sick man. And now we're getting into the really heaviness of the episode. After I watched it, I mean, there was a lot of emotions that, I experienced watching this, and I was like, dang, I wish I could do the podcast right now because there's so much that I could talk about. But now it's been a few days, so it's kind of like, but
Sorry about that.
no
Now I
worries,
do
man.
remember
No
you did
worries.
text me though. You said this episode was gonna blow me away. So I was
Did
like,
it?
dang, this guy liked this episode.
Or did I?
Or did he?
Ooh,
Maybe he said
that's why we're here.
it's gonna blow you out the door to go find a new show to watch. I don't know.
Yeah, because they put on another dang zombie kiss of death. Two in a single episode? I don't think so. Um,
So
so yeah.
we really do see that Frank is struggling.
Yeah.
It's a lot to take care of Frank in this stage, and we don't know
Yeah.
how long it's
Especially
been
like
going on.
yeah, and especially in, a post apocalyptic world.
Yeah. Now somehow they've gotten a hold of some medication to
Yeah. It must
really
have been,
ease things.
some stuff with Joel or whatever.
It's
Right.
possible.
Some
Yeah.
trade.
It's possible that they did some trade there. And so Frank makes a request to
Yes.
Bill, which is, give me one last good day because I want to die and I'm done.
Yeah. So what I have in my notes as he's telling, this whole plan, I put, Frank's sick, he makes a suicide plan, and I said, what a selfish bum. Right? I mean, obviously, his situation's, a lot different kind of than like other people that typically take their own lives, right? And whether or not, they don't mean to be selfish, right? They just kind of want the pain to go away.
Hmm.
But it is a selfish thing, right? And so, especially from Frank's whole motive of like, whatever, I was like, you know, this, like, because Bill immediately is like, I can't. I don't know how you expect me to do any of this. Which I would have done the same thing. I've been like, you've, I don't know how I'd react to that, you know?
Right.
Because it's one thing to see someone take their own life, but then, you know, to be asked to in assisting, it's like, there's no way.
But
Gotcha.
it's the idea of these kind of situations where it's like, what would you do? Now you're talking about how the act of suicide can be viewed as selfish, but it could also be
Hmm.
viewed as selfish for Bill to say, no, you need to stay here with me even though you're suffering,
True.
you know? And I'm not saying that there's one side that I necessarily fall on or not.
Yeah.
Um, but I have some chronic illnesses, and I've had some times where they have been absolutely awful to me. Now, the thought of taking my own life has never crossed my mind with them,
Thank goodness.
but uh, I feel like I have gotten a small taste of what it can be like to have a truly like debilitating and crippling disease. And I'm sure Frank is just in a massive amount of pain at this point in his stage of multiple sclerosis.
Yeah.
And so, no one can really understand where Frank's coming from unless you have been in that sort of a situation. That being said, it doesn't make it any easier for Bill. That's his request. They have a decision to make. Now, at this point, I'm watching it and I'm getting real confused as having played the game. And I'm like,
Yeah.
where is this going?
Where is their
because
fight and where is, because,
because
I
I don't
mean,
see Frank hanging himself at this point. I don't think
yeah,
it's possible.
you're like, there's still a suicide involved, but
This was the part
yeah.
where I really started to get confused.
Yeah.
So they have one good last day. They go to the
Mm-hmm.
boutique. I don't think they show
Yep.
that though.
No, you sound like walking towards it.
They have their same dinner that they had that first night again.
Mm-hmm. They get
Which,
married.
and so then he crushes up the pills, puts them in Frank's wine, and then it's revealed that I think Bill had taken the other pills already.
He said something like, Yeah. Uh, which I was confused about it is when because Frank says, "Why do I know that there was like already pills in that bottle or something?"
Here, I have the scene up right now. Let me check it out. He had apparently crushed pills into the wine bottle itself already.
Yeah.
The
Enough to
tragic
kill a horse, as
suicide.
he says.
Yep. So Bill says, I'm not gonna continue living without you," and so he also drinks the pills. So they both
Hmm.
decide to go to their room and die together. At which point
Yes.
Ellie and Joel show up. There's a note left for them saying, "Don't come in. Here's the keys to the truck."
And protect Tess.
And protect Tess. Which,
Which, you
oops.
know, yeah, right. Um, yeah, this is Bill, as we see in this scene, taking his own life and with like the note, we've already mentioned it, he's a completely different man. Um, from the game. There's no way Bill would do this.
They're not. They only share the name at this point.
Yeah,
They are not the same character at all. That is correct.
yeah, not at all. So yeah, I mean, and that was the thing. I was really confused, and I was like, "Dang, like that's crazy. They're actually gonna go die," which is insane. Um,
Now, in the game, the whole point of getting to Bill is basically to get a truck.
yeah, he needs a car,
Yep.
as he says.
And he does get a truck. He does. He's able to show up to Bill's and get it, but not a whole lot of work in the show.
Not a whole lot of
Lot more work in the game.
exactly. See, that's another thing I want to talk about. Is that like you don't get the joy, in the show of going through Bill's town and all this stuff that he's got, and um, I mean the high school, like, scratch that completely.
Mm-hmm.
Lincoln High School is no. I mean, it does say City of Lincoln. I'm sure there's a school there, but scratch that. I think they're the Eagles. You know,
Go Birds.
go go Birds. Um, and when my question is, when are they going to put a bloater in there?
Right.
Because that was the first time we're introduced to a bloater. Because Ellie's like, "What is that?" And then both Bill and Joel are like, "Oh, those are bloaters. They're been affected for a really long time and all this stuff."
Mm-hmm.
So, and if I mean the next we see bloaters in like Colorado at the university. I don't think that might be the next time because I don't remember any bloaters in Pittsburgh. So maybe the next time is like when they're at the University of Eastern Colorado
Hmm.
in game.
Yeah.
So who knows when a bloater's gonna pop out of nowhere? And everything, like we mentioned, everything about the game, not even just the character of Bill, but like everything of the entire, Bill's town sequence of the game is just gone.
So did you watch the behind the scenes afterwards?
I did.
Okay. There was a quote that I wanted to talk about. So here's what Neil Druckmann says.
My philosophy on this show has always been, when should we deviate and when should we come back? If it's kind of the same or worse, we stay where the game is. If it's better, we deviate.
What is your thought on that, having seen this episode?
Well, I mean, they deviated with the kiss of death, and they didn't have to put that in there.
That was not better,
That made
was
it
it?
worse.
That was not
No.
better at all. Neil Druckmann, why did you have them give Tess the kiss of death?
Why couldn't she
That was
just
not better.
blow up?
You did it wrong, Neil Druckmann. I'm gonna tell you.
Unfortunately, he didn't listen to our podcast at that point to, reshoot that scene. But he did give us the mask with Bill and the whole deviation, I guess.
He gave us the what?
The whole deviation thing that you wanted of like something new and
Well. So here's what I wanted.
or I guess you don't want deviation, you want something
Yeah,
that's like,
that's
we don't know
where
about.
I have two things about this episode. Two comments and slash complaints about
Okay.
this. When I was first watching the Frank and Bill stuff, what I want is elaboration. What I want is, this is what's been set in the game. We're going to go outside the game now and kind of fill in the gaps a little bit. And they might be
Yeah.
gaps that the game didn't need to rely on, Bill's relationship with Frank is inconsequential in the game because it has nothing to do with Joel and Ellie. But it's another example of how bleak and sad the world is. Is that you can see even somebody as cynical and like hardened and closed off as Bill can still be like affected and hurt.
Yeah.
And it's I think it's done really well just in passing, just watching how he reacts when he finds Frank's body and how he acts about that stuff.
Yeah.
But here when you're making a show like this, what I want is for you to build on that stuff that you've already given me. And they were doing that until they weren't.
Yeah.
And that's when I got annoyed at the episode. Kind of. I know the show's going to be different. It's made that clear at this point.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But I guess now I look at the episode in the chronological timeline of the story of the game, and I'm seeing this now, and it's kind of like, okay, if you were a fan of the series, this was a huge deviation. You're either gonna love it because it was a good story, which it was a good story, or you're gonna hate it because it's not like the game, or
Yeah.
you are brand new to The Last of Us, and you're gonna say, oh, well, that was a nice story. Didn't see a whole lot of those main characters though, and
Mm.
because this, what 3/4 of this episode is spent just focusing on Bill and Frank. It feels like.
Well, yeah, and yeah, definitely as someone who, say they haven't, like I have, a friend that reached out to me because he knows I love The Last of Us, and he asked like if I was watching it. I shouted out the podcast. We'll see if he listens to it. And I told him like, I mean, because he hasn't played it, but he doesn't have like a PlayStation. No, like he's not a big gamer, right? But he loves like shows and movies, and so he's like, I didn't know if I should play the game first, and I'm like, it's if you haven't played it, it's totally fine. As someone who hasn't, it's probably they don't really understand Bill and like the whole point that he has in the story. You're kind of like, okay, like they could have just gotten this car and whatever,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
And now looking at this episode 3.
Yeah.
Episode 1 was extra long.
Mm-hmm.
We covered pre-outbreak, and then Sarah's death 20 years after in the QZ, and then we kind of set the stage for where the game begins, right? The last two
Yeah.
episodes have covered essentially zero ground story-wise.
Yeah,
Like,
basically. I mean, because, well, yeah, because episode 2, that's maybe like an hour and a half of gameplay that they made,
which is a
but it's
lot.
still,
That's a lot of like wandering and like combat and stuff like that, sneaking around.
yeah. So as far as story, not much. In this episode, like in Bill's part, that's, yeah, it is a lot of, combat and walking around, but you still find out a lot, about Bill, and then you go to the high school, you do all this stuff. But in this one, it's just, their love story.
Mm-hmm. We talked about this last episode. It kind of seemed like we could have cut down the wandering around a bit. And I feel
Yeah.
like it was kind of drawn out because they wanted to end on Tess's death.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I think it's drawn out because I've played the games, and so I kind of know what the city looks like in a way. I know where they're going, and so I didn't want to waste a ton of time just like walking around. Now the clicker stuff was fine. I wouldn't have changed any of that. That was really well done. Uh, but the episode two was like shorter than both of these episodes, and we
Yeah,
we
and
had
so
talked
was
about cutting out less of that the microbiologist part at the beginning, cutting that down a
uh
few minutes, maybe adding a few more minutes, you know, because it really did feel like story wise, if you've played the game, episode two didn't cover any ground at all. We really didn't progress hardly at all. We went outside the city, and Tess died, and that was it.
yeah.
Uh, and then in this episode, we do even less with Ellie and Joel. They go and search their hidey holes, and they pick up the truck, which is supposed to take a lot longer in the game, but it just seemed very easy for Ellie and Joel this way. Like they didn't really have to work for it, you know?
Oh yeah, nothing, dude. That high school and the whole bloaters, can take forever, especially if you're playing on grounded.
And there's a feeling of accomplishment when you play the game,
Yeah.
and you do go through all this because you probably spend a good hour with Bill.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I want the what's been established in the games to be like the golden standard. We don't deviate from that, but we build on it, you know? We fill in the gaps. That's what I want from like a film adaptation of a video game, you know? A while ago there was talk of a BioShock movie. Now, BioShock 1 and 2 take place in an underground or underwater city called Rapture.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff you can find out, like audio logs and stuff, that the leader and creator of the city of Rapture, his name's Andrew Ryan, kind of talks about why he built the city and how he was tired of like the government and the man trying to bring you down and make him share his belongings and his wealth with others. Like it was supposed to be like this new utopia of people who kind of thought the same way. That's what I would want to see from a BioShock movie. Tell me his story about creating the city and stuff. Don't just tell me game one. I've played game one and it's been fantastic. You can't make it any better.
Yeah.
And so the deviation, it does annoy me. But you know, if you didn't play the game, you're probably gonna think that the episode was well done and that the story was good. You know, because if you ignore the deviation from the game, it is good. That being said, from like a storytelling and like progressions, like perspective of the overall season, I think that Bill and Frank's story went on too long, and I think we
Yeah.
needed to get back to Ellie and Joel sooner.
Mm.
And I think they should have had to work a little harder for the truck, you know?
Yeah.
Like maybe we could have done a back and forth on the flashbacks, you know? It could be 20 years ago we see Bill, and then we cut forward to present day and there's Joel and Ellie entering the place, you know, or whatever. And then we cut back over and we see a little more of what happens to them until you find out that they're dead, you know? And then
Which
we
I
cut
mean,
forward.
that's not their style. We learned that
Yep.
from part two.
Which is, if you remember, that's how I would have corrected part two.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't hate part two.
Me
I
neither.
also don't love part two. A lot of what part two happens, I see what Neil Druckmann was going for, but I also see why it didn't work on a lot of people. You know,
Yeah.
I think that the characters you play as in part two should have alternated. I don't think it should have been a straight character A, straight character B.
Hmm.
I think that would have been better. But that's just me. What do I know?
Wow. I don't know. A lot about biology or something.
Even
Um,
better, I got good grades in it.
at the beginning of the episode, we see Joel and Ellie, and she kind of brings up Tess, right? And so you kind of
Hmm.
expect that because after they leave the whole subway thing, and she's like, "Yo, about Tessie," and he says like the whole, which we got this quote later. Let's keep our histories to ourselves. You're not going to repeat, or I mean, yeah, you're not going to bring up Tess, and whatever. repeat what I say, and what you say goes. I'll talk about that in a sec. But something that I didn't really like that Ellie says, this is a quote that she says in the show, talking about like Tess's death and the reason because Joel and Tess accepted to take her is don't blame me for something that isn't my fault. Which
Okay.
I mean, I guess is true, but there was no point in putting that, especially in at the time when I wrote this, I was expecting, the whole let's keep our histories to ourselves quote.
Mhm.
And instead she's like going off on him when she was actually like sorry, in game.
Hey, look, about Tess. I don't even know what
Here's how this thing's gonna play out. You don't bring up Tess. Ever. Matter of fact, we just keep our histories to ourselves. Secondly, don't tell anybody about your condition. They think you're crazy, they'll try to kill you. And lastly, you do what I say when I say it. We clear?
Sure.
Repeat it.
And then she was like, don't be mad at me because like whatever. So that I was kind of like,
Don't hate me because you
ah,
ain't me. And then
yeah.
Joel
I was
said,
like,
"Shut up."
yeah, right. So I was kind of like, what? So I mean, I'm glad we finally got that quote at the end of the episode. I'm not a big fan of how it was delivered though, right? Because the way he said it, he wasn't really too mad about the whole test thing. He was basically like, "Hey, let's keep our histories to ourselves." Um, and then he's like, "This is how it's gonna go. Repeat it." And she's like, "What you say goes," basically. And he's like, "Okay, good." But in the game, he's like frustrated, and he's like saying like, "Repeat it," because like, I'm mad,
Mhm.
like, and I want to make sure that you got this done. And she's kind of like, you know, trying to. She's like, "Okay, what you say goes." Like she's frustrated with him too. But in the show, they kind of already like, there's not really that frustration, and they're just, I don't know. So that's one thing I didn't like. But so that's when I expected it to be in like the woods, but then they put it at the very end of the episode, and they were already kind of like, you know,
Buddy, buddy.
had that more buddy buddy. So yeah, so I was kind of like, didn't really like that.
And so
But
that was in the truck then when that happened in the show.
no, so no, it was
Was it in the house?
it was in the house right before
Okay.
they get in the truck.
Okay.
We don't really get too much of like in the truck. She's all she says, like, oh, I'm in a car. This is insane. It's like a spaceship, and I have the seatbelt.
Right. Right.
Right.
And I guess also it's kind of it's a weird thing to do with the Bill story because now if you haven't played the game, I can kind of see someone watching it and being like, "That was nice. What was the point?" Because if you haven't played the game, you have no connection to Bill.
Yeah.
And now watching the show and seeing that Bill is dead already by the time they get there, I get that they're trying to tell this happier, like, in a bleak world, there's this happier story that's there in the middle, you know what I mean? But it does
Hmm.
take a huge detour from the show, and it's a detour that's very early in the season. That,
Yeah.
I don't know, even if you haven't played the game, the episode still might not work, because it is a very slow episode, too.
It
Like,
is.
it's the last episode, even though we don't cover a ton of story ground, we do see them like wandering around, avoiding the clickers, you know what I mean? There's that whole like stuff, and there's some adrenaline in it. Even the part when he's fighting off the raiders, it's not the most exciting thing, and it doesn't last very long at all.
Yeah. Definitely not.
So yeah, this episode it could work for you, or it might not.
Why not?
As far as Neil Druckmann's statement that when it's better than the game we deviate, I don't know. Everyone's gonna have their own interpretation on that. That's a bold claim to make, though, I think.
Because how can you be better than that game?
I mean, when you're the guy who wrote the game, I can definitely see why you might look back and say I would have done things differently, you know, on this and this
Yeah,
and
but like
this.
if I'm playing the game and you make me either A, play as Bill or just show me this long cutscene of, I would have been like, what the heck is this? I'm trying to play the game. Yeah, sure, it's a great story, but
And if I'm looking at the timestamps here, we go to Bill's flashback at about the 18-minute mark. Joe and Ellie do not show up to his town until about an hour and 4 minutes
yeah, so it's just like 45 minutes of just straight
of
Bill story.
straight Bill's story, not progressing the main story. Uh,
Yeah.
which, like I said, I would be probably totally fine with things if it was elaborating on the game, but the fact that like Deviated and Bill like never even see like has his interactions with Ellie, that I was kind of like looking forward to them doing that,
Right?
or like
Like
working
their
hard for the
performance
truck.
together was awesome.
It is. Bill and Ellie have some great like banters and dialogue with each other.
Who the is this punk and what's she doing here?
I am none of your goddamn business, and we're here because you owe Joel some favors. And you
Oh.
can start by taking these off.
I owe Joel some favors. Is some kind of joke? Yeah, sure, Joel. Go ahead. Take my card. Take all my food, too, while you're at it.
By the looks of it, you could lose some of that food.
Listen to me, you little shit.
You handcuffed
I
me.
need you to shut up.
I was looking forward to the part with the fridge that like hooks Joel's leg and he goes upside down.
Yeah.
That part's crazy. I was like, man, that's gonna be so cool because it's Bill that shows up there, right? That when you
Yeah,
first
it's
see
Bill
him.
that saves them, yeah.
Yeah. I was like, that's gonna be so crazy to see that in like the show. Nope.
Right? And then another thing, not only did Joel leave an AR behind in game when you're in Bill's town, you introduced to the bow and the um spike grenade thing. So those are two tools that our man Joel won't be able to use. Not like we'll probably even see much combat anyway in the show,
It's not
but
looking like it, is it?
no.
It is not
The
looking
the
like
most
it.
combat we've seen is the kiss of death.
Hey, when it's better, we deviate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh
Uh,
man, someone tells me he shouldn't have said that.
yeah, he might regret it.
Because now every
Um,
time you deviate, if it sucks. This episode is debatable. Like I said, I do not think it's a bad episode by any
yeah.
means. I think
Like I was entertained.
it is very well done. Um, I think me trying to figure out where we're at show to game wise was still kind of being adjusted. Now that I realize they're just doing their own thing, I think my expectations are going to be less. One thing I was thinking of, how could you tell this story still, but have it stick to the game? Well, one, you can't, because the show has a happy ending and the game does not for these
Yeah.
two.
Hmm.
So you'd have to accept the sad ending of the game, which is what we already knew anyways.
Yep.
Now it'd be very hard with the fact that Frank is so sick with what looks like MS and the need to have the Frank character hang themselves. Well, maybe we change that part and Frank's just gonna kill himself one way or another, you know?
Yeah.
Uh, let's say that he presents his request to Bill. This is gonna be my last day, and then you're gonna crush up those pills, and I'm gonna die. And Bill says no, I can't do it. They get in a big argument because of that, and Frank leaves because of that, you know?
Hmm.
And then Joel and Ellie show up, and Bill's kind of freaking out, and they're like, "What's up?" He's like, "Frank left. I need to go find him." And they look all over town. When they find him, it's too late. That could have kind of kept you somewhat on track with where the game was, you know? Not
Yeah. But then
exactly the
like
same, but
because even then, it's basically like his suicide of being like, I'm sick. But in game, it's all just because I don't want to turn.
hmm
So
And if you're to do it that way, yes, it has a sad ending because Frank kills himself and they had a falling out before then, you know?
yeah,
But it could be kind of, in a way, foreshadowing of like the end of the game because it would be Bill's selfishness didn't lead to happiness, you know? Like, no, I'm not
yeah,
going to help you because I can't picture living in a world without you. Well, that's the exact problem that Joel gets faced with at the end.
hmm
So it's something that could do a little bit of foreshadowing there, you know? That
yeah,
like just because this is what you want does not mean this is necessarily the right answer or it's going to bring you happiness in the long run. But
yeah.
I was trying to see how I could tie the two together, keep this story and still have it line up with the game somehow.
I mean, you could try, but
You can try.
just one last little thing to, that gives me hope. We finally get to see Ellie in that like red beach shirt.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, there's the Ellie outfit.
About time because Joel's got his outfit on lock. So yeah, we finally get that. She
Yes.
finally will look like Ellie, which will be nice.
She finally got that on. There's very little in The Last of Us that is happy for a reason. In
Yeah,
fact, one of the few lights of happiness in the game is Ellie. Like,
for
Ellie
sure.
is just positivity in most cases, you know?
Yeah.
She's sassy and she gets angry, but she also admires a lot of things that she sees in life that she's never seen before. She appreciates a lot of things. And so she is kind of like the light in the darkness in many ways. And as you travel across the country with her, you just encounter all of these sad people because the world is a sad place now. You know,
hmm
you lose Tess. There's Bill's whole attitude and the hints of his falling out with Frank. There's Sam and Henry, right? That's the names?
hmm
Yeah.
Yep, Sam and Henry.
Sam and Henry. And like just goes on and on with all these characters that you meet that no one's really happy, but Ellie still manages to have a good time where she goes. And I think that that's kind of one of the things that draws us to The Last of Us is that we accept this bleak world that nothing's really happy, but that Ellie is kind of like our, you know,
He's the Firefly man.
she's our little bit of positivity in the game. And I think I could have used a little more adrenaline in this show, in this episode, at some point, you know? The Raiders weren't quite enough. Like, I think we needed to see, because it really makes it kind of seem like Bill's traps are just foolproof. Like,
Well, yeah,
they're
and something
perfect.
that's like in the game, you know, he has to go through the entire like they're still infected all over the town. Like they still get in
Mm-hmm.
and he has to re-put tripwires and stuff. But in the show, he puts up one fence with the, lock on there and nothing. Like they're able to play the piano, they're able to do whatever, and not a single infected gets in.
Right. And there's things like I like just like how I pick up things and like read a lot in video games. I like
Yeah,
walking around a lot in video games too, because I'm someone
so
who
do
like
I.
just admires the graphics
Yeah,
a lot of
and I
times.
gotta look for the Abbey Dad coin. So,
Well, yeah, I'm usually looking for those too. I almost found them all in God of War Ragnarok.
but not all of them though. So
No, a
that's why
couple
you
have
haven't
eluded
platinum yet.
me. I think those couple though are I think those ones are in Astro's Playroom.
Oh yeah, yeah,
A lot
yeah,
of
for
people don't
sure.
know that, but you gotta find those two in Astro's Playroom to platinum God of War Ragnarok.
Yeah.
So, uh, but as far as like this episode goes, and if you played the game, you're just gonna have to figure out for yourself whether or not this worked for you.
Yeah. Yeah, we always end the episodes with a rating out of 10. We gave the first one like a 9. Second one, I gave it like a 6 because of the kiss of death.
Yeah.
Um, This one, yeah, like you said, for someone who's played the game and is, we missed out on all of the Ellie and Bill one-liners and stuff, the whole high school stuff, Frank's story and everything was totally different. As someone who played the game and you're expecting something different, I mean, you gotta give that like a 2. But as, just entertainment and a good story, I'd give it like a 7 or 8.
I'd probably give it an 8. I'd give this episode an 8, I think. I think that
Yeah.
if we're just looking at the episode at face value and ignoring the game, I think it tells a really good story.
Yeah, I agree.
However, it's a story that detours from the main story, and we
No
don't
one watches the
spend.
show for side quests.
We basically do. We go on like a 50-minute side quest in this episode, and then our main characters end up in zero danger whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so it's just the Ellie and Joel stuff wasn't the most exciting stuff to watch. Not a ton of new ground was covered. And then we watched Bill and Frank for 50 minutes. And
Yeah.
so that's the episode. I think that, I would recommend managing expectations with this episode and going
Mm,
forward for the season, from
yeah.
here on out. At this point, I mean, if it's better, we deviate. So I'm pretty sure winter comes, David's gonna eat Ellie.
Uh,
What do you
yeah,
think?
basically.
What was that? Tiny little pieces?
Oh, goodness.
We'll just have to see how many more times we deviate in this, The story of Bill, not a huge one, In the grand scheme of Ellie and Joel, you can still get away. The real stuff starts picking up after this.
Yes.
And so if you're gonna really deviate with the character, sure, why not Bill? There's a lot I miss about Bill. I think Bill's a fantastic character, and he's much more entertaining in the game than in the show.
Much more. Yeah.
But if you're gonna deviate and tell a different story, sure, why not Bill? But how much more are we gonna deviate when it's better? Because, like you
Yeah.
said, we saw a zombie kiss of death, and like you were saying, Tess's death, that's sad until it's not, and it's hilariously weird. Like, way to ruin that moment. Why? My
Yeah.
questions still have not been answered.
Well, I hope it kind of doesn't get answered because I don't need any of that again.
But, eh, what do I know?
Meh. So basically, everybody listening, if you're still with us,
They're gone.
the whole point, yeah, the whole point of everything that we've learned in this episode is, what does Tyler know?
Yeah, what do I know? That's the whole point here today.
That's been our episode. If you stuck with us to the end, that was a roller coaster. We talked about a lot of stuff. Let us know if you agree or if you don't agree. If you played the game, maybe you don't like it, maybe you do. And if you didn't play the game, then I mean, who knows? What does Tyler know? I don't know.
Well, what do I
So
know?
anyway, we're excited again for the next episode, and maybe our expectations are a little lower because we don't know what to expect anymore because deviation and whatnot.
Because
But
spores aren't a thing, Bill's not a thing.
and all the many more. But what do we know, eh?
The hive mind is a thing, but it
And
wasn't a
what
thing in this episode because there were like no zombies.
yeah.
It's like no infected at all.
I don't even what does Tyler know, so
Yeah. I mean, I counted like 2 infected in the whole episode, but hey, what do I know?
so he doesn't know how to count me. All right. Well, we'll see you guys in the next one and have a great week.
Bye.